Hello, welcome to my channel. Often, like when I do my live streams, I am asked, have I ever experienced anything paranormal? And I often tell them, yes, I have. So I am going to share with you my experiences. The first one that I had ever experienced was back in the 1990s. My daughter wasn't very old. She was only like 3 years old. And we had a 2-bedroom apartment. The bedrooms was upstairs. So by this time, my daughter knew how to get out of her crib. And one day, I had put her to bed for nap, and I was doing dishes. Well, she had been asleep for a little while, and I knew how it sounded when she would come down the stairs. So I'm doing the dishes, and I hear my daughter come downstairs, and I call out her name. She didn't answer or nothing, so I stopped and I went and looked. And I didn't see her anywhere, so I go back upstairs and I look. She's still in the bed asleep in her crib. Now, one would think, well, maybe you heard your neighbors going up and down their stairs. No, because I knew how it sounded when they was up and down and busy in their apartment. There's a distinct sound between your own place and your neighbor's place. This was definitely the sound of my daughter coming downstairs, but yet she was still in her crib asleep. Now, in the same apartment, we always kept the door locked so that in order for us to come in, we would use the key, of course. So I'm lounging on the sofa, and of course, I know what it would sound like for the key to go into the lock and the door open. So I'm laying there, and I heard the key come into the lock, and I heard the doorknob open and the door crack. So I'm waiting for my husband to come around into the living room. He never did. So I got up and I looked. He wasn't even home yet. Now, this was in that one apartment. Later on, a few years later, me and my husband separates. So they put me into a 1-bedroom apartment. And one evening, I'm sitting on my couch, and the way that the apartment was set up, the living room, if you had your couch set against one wall, you could look straight through the little hallway. So I'm looking through the hallway, and I see a shadowed figure that stood maybe about 3.5, 4 feet tall. A figured shadow. It wasn't a full figure shadow. I could see it looked like a solid, well, not a solid, but like no form, but a head on top of that. So I saw it go from the bathroom into the bedroom. That was in that 1-room apartment at that same apartment complex. So later on down the line, me and hubby, we get reunited, remarry, move into another house. And this is where the most activity occurred. Now, my 2 daughters would share of their own experiences. But there was one where I had just stepped out of the bathroom, and I looked down the hall, and I see my husband, full figure, full color, apparition, from the kitchen into the living room, like he was going into the living room to sit down. So I go down the hall to see him in the living room, and he's not in there. I go looking for him. He's outside. I ask him, had you come in? He said, no, I've been out here. But I saw him plainly, head, cap, down to shoes, because he always wore a cap when he went outside. Sometimes he would go without one, but he usually wore one when he'd be outside. And I saw him plainly go from the kitchen, across the hall, into the living room. There was another time in that same house that my husband had just left. Now, all four of us actually was there, my son and my two daughters. Well, my son was only about 5 years old, 6 years old at the time. And after he left, he was gone. We knew that the car was gone. Me heard him say my son's name. Now, there's a certain way that he says it too. And I heard him call it. And I said, did you guys hear that? Yeah. All three kids heard it. My son heard his dad call his name. My girls heard their dad call his name. That was weird. There had been several times that I would see a black little, like, fuzzy ball, pardon me, like a black fuzzy ball, only, of course, you know, it wasn't a solid object, fly by from, like, the hall into the kitchen, and then I would see a white light chasing it. I often thought the angels was chasing the demons out with that. Saw that happen several times. There was one time I was sitting at my computer, and it was a particularly warm day, so we had the living room door open, and my desk was right there at that door. And I saw from this side something quickly whiz by and out that side, and I just knew that it went through the door. And it wasn't a bug. This was kind of big, and it was fast, just phew. I saw it from my peripheral and out this side of my peripheral, and I knew it went right behind my head and out the door. There was another time we had a real beautiful black stand that was kind of like a bar. It was an entertainment center where you could put your TV and equipment, and then above that was a shelf with a mirror and hangers so that you could put wine glasses on it and keep wine bottles. So it was really a beautiful setup. And the way that we had it positioned, the mirror that was in the back of that reflected through the hallway. And this was an evening. It was night, so we had the hall light on. And I saw a white glowing figure walking toward the living room. And I thought, maybe I'm in a funny position. So I tried to replay that. I tried to debunk it by getting in different positions, see if I could cause that to happen again. It never did happen again, no matter what position I got in, no matter which way I looked, what angle, it didn't happen again. So that was never explained whatsoever. The experiences that my girls had had alone is completely different. And now, in that house, there was a lot of occurrences in that particular house. Since I have been here with my new husband, there's been sounds. no visions, just sounds. At one point, I thought I heard something like going on in this closet, in this studio. And I kind of summed it up as it being my downstairs neighbors. Well, they have since moved out. And here recently, I've been hearing things again. A few days ago, sitting at the kitchen table, both of my animals, my girls, was asleep, laying next to me. And I heard toward the front of me on the right, kind of this way in direction, almost right at the edge of the hallway, what sounded kind of like a sneeze and a jingle, because both of them have got their collars with their tags, so they jingle. And this kind of sounded like a sneeze and a jingle at the same time. But my girls were asleep, and my husband was laying on the couch, and I would have known if it was him because the direction would have been from that way, not from that way. 2 nights ago, I laying in bed working on dozing off. Now, I had just had a wonderful live stream, and I had even done a singing video, so the day had been great. My dog's sleeping on the bed beside me, and I start hearing a woman humming. Almost sounded like my voice, humming a few tunes to get started on a song. Only no song broke out. It was just a humming. A woman's voice humming a tune. And I felt my dog move, so I looked over at my dog. My dog raised up and was listening. So she heard it too. It wasn't just me. She heard it too. And that's pretty well the last thing that I have experienced thus far. So, am I a skeptic? In a lot of ways, yes. Because, movies makes the paranormal seem different from real experiences. I do believe that demons attack people, and they attack them in ways that can startle them. But as Satan has found out, he doesn't startle me very easily at all, because I know his tricks. There was a particular duplex that my brother and his wife lived in, and she had shared several times with my mother what their little girl, who at the time was a toddler, around 3 years old, had been experiencing. She would see a man in the place, and her mother would tell her to just go and tell this man, go away in the name of Jesus. Well, time came around that my niece was getting ready to turn 4 years old, and my sister-in-law was having a second baby, and the cesarean was set up to be 4 days after my niece's birthday. So I went with my parents to visit. Now, my parents had 3 dogs, and where they was going to be staying, they didn't allow animals. So they had me watch the dogs at my brother's house, and I stayed at my brother's house. Now, as soon as we had gotten there, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I told Satan, I said, I know you're here. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not afraid of you. And I wasn't. So a little later that day, my sister-in-law was pulling up different videos, because at the time she was with a paranormal group. So she showed me what she had done for that apartment. She had set up a camcorder in her daughter's room, and then she ran out into the living room to sit with her husband and daughter. And she continued to let that play, and I'm listening. And in an angry, deep male voice, it said, "Get out or I will kill you." I heard it myself. She caught that on that recorder. She kept the clip and had uploaded it to her collection of videos that she had with her group. So during that visit, there was one particular moment where my parents was still there. They was getting ready to leave to go where they was staying. And my brother was talking to us. And then we heard a crash. He went to go check it out because it kind of sounded like it came from the closet. So he went to look if anything fell in the closet. Nothing had budged, but yet it sounded like an object had crashed in the closet. Another time in that place, I'm sleeping on the couch, and I'm only half awake, mind you, half asleep. I'm not into a deep sleep. The girls was up on the couch sleeping at my feet, and the male was sleeping on the floor beside me. And I'm alerted because my sister-in-law turns on the hall light to go to the bathroom. She hadn't had the baby yet. And she's walking barefooted. And then I hear solid-soled loafers, something similar to like penny loafers, walking behind her, following her into the bathroom. Now mind you, these dogs loved her. They were familiar with her, they loved her, they were fine with her. They would get around her and let her love on all of them, no problem. Even if she would have gotten up in the night, they would have probably looked up, saw she was going to the bathroom and gone back to sleep, no problem. But not this time. The male dog was growling and his hackles was up. And the girls at the foot of the couch at my feet, both of them were whimpering and shaking, both of them. And they was all looking toward that hallway. They knew something was following my sister-in-law. They kept their distance, they stayed with me, but at the same time, they were upset. So yes, I have had experiences. I've heard sounds. And honestly, the experience that I had at my brother's duplex is greatly the most disturbing experience that I'd had. The most disturbing. But yes, things do happen. And I believe that because I've experienced it for myself. But the one thing for sure, me being a believer in Jesus Christ, I know that I can cast the devils down, put them back underneath my feet, and I don't have to fear about any paranormal stuff that's going on. But those are my experiences. If any of you have an experience, please share in the comments below. I would love to read them. I like hearing if anybody has ever had an experience of their own. So just, if you've got anything that you'd like to share, you know where to put it. And I will comment back. I'll make a reply. So, thanks for watching, guys.